Everyone knows today we're having a press conference to announce the lawsuit that's going to be coming out against Red Flag. But we're just going to wait just a moment here. So we have a few people in the broadcast. As you can see, from our back end, there at the Capitol, the room is so packed that you probably will not even be able to get in if you're wanting to get in. If you're media, it is absolutely packed. But we'll just go ahead and get started on our end. And my name's Taylor Rhodes, and I'm RMGO's day-to-day lobbyist at the Capitol underneath the Golden Dome on most days. I have been the tip of the spear for RMGO at the Capitol and making sure that this, in my opinion, completely unconstitutional bill, now law, was hopefully defeated. Unfortunately, we weren't able to defeat it in the legislature, but as you'll see today, we have another path that will be hopefully extremely beneficial to not only gun owners, but to people that just value the Constitution across the state. So for you guys that don't know what this red flag gun confiscation law is, what it essentially does is it allows your neighbor, an ex-spouse, ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, and even the police, someone that was, a Raiders fan when the Broncos were playing the Raiders, that didn't like you, got your name and says, this guy's crazy. Obviously, they're the crazy ones, right? So it allows those people to call the police to say, this person's crazy, they shouldn't own guns. At this point, the police will take that as essentially a search warrant on your home and a no-knock raid. What we saw in the House was the Republicans had run amendments to not allow no-knock raids, but unfortunately, the Democrats and even some of those Democrats decided that they wanted to do the right thing and vote against that or vote for that they wouldn't allow no-knock raids, but it overwhelmingly passed. So I'm here to tell you that under the law that was just signed by the governor, no-knock raids will be legal. So to go back to the main point here, the bill allows that sheriff to essentially come in to your home, or police to come into your home, no-knock raid your home, barge in the middle of the night is when they're going to come and seize your firearms. Unfortunately, this is a reality that we are going to have to live with unless this lawsuit that we have today that gets put forward in Denver to essentially do away with this is done forth. If the police enter my home at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to think that this is a home invasion. This is not going to put myself or the police in a good situation. This is going to essentially put them in harm and me in harm. As a gun owner, I'm going to come to the door with my firearm if I hear a bump in the night. It's just what I am essentially trained to do, the training that I've been through. They're going to be coming in with the SWAT teams. So when the SWAT team sees that I have a firearm, they're going to start shooting. I'm confused. I just woke up from a slumber, and they're essentially imposing this, gun confiscation order, and it puts them both of us in harm's way because it's going to turn into a gunfight. Am I wrong? At this point, they're going to seize your firearms. One way or another, they're going to come in. They're going to take your firearms unconstitutionally without due process, and they're going to come in. And at this point, they will then have 14 days to give you a court appearance, right? So, in my history, you can't even find a good lawyer in 14 days unless you have one already on retainer. And in a lot of these situations, myself included, I can't afford to have a lawyer on retainer. I'm, going to have X, Y, and Z. There's going to be people that aren't in the financial situation to do that. So to find a good lawyer in 14 days seems a little crazy. And that's right. I see Chad says 14 days if you're alive. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because I mean, realistically, I mean, it could be a shootout. It absolutely could be a shootout, especially if it's in the middle of the night, when things are, a little bit different than in the light time. So what I'm gonna ask you to do right now is share this post. So we've got a few viewers on now, but share this post to your own personal pages so we can notify people around the state of what's going on, what RMGO is doing to stand up to the anti-gun politicians in Denver. So please share this post. I just want to take just a quick moment to explain what RMGO actually did. So not only the hundreds of thousands of hours, I would imagine, put into me being at the Capitol, lobbying these politicians, but our RMGO sent over 300,000 emails across the state to people that were, pro-gun and Constitution-loving folks. Upon this, our members signed over 100,000 petitions that we delivered to the state capitol. Our members alone sent over 10,000 emails to these legislators and to these lawmakers in Denver at the state capitol. And not to mention, we've been all over the state trying to educate people on what is going on. I'm getting a little feedback here, and it looks like we are going to go ahead and start the press conference. But I will be back with you.
KUSA, okay with that mic there? We'll find out. Yeah. Audio test real quick. I'll wait.
So it looks like we're going to get started any minute now from the state capitol, as Dudley Brown, our executive director, introduces
there used to be a media room in this building. Those of you, I don't know, I don't recognize anybody who's old enough. But back when I ran the state house stuff, we had a news conference room, and it was huge. We had plenty of room. So, yeah. See. Okay. Here you go, Marianne.
Gary, that's for you.
All right, audio check real quick. 1, 2, 3. You guys good? Okay. Hi, I'm Dudley Brown with Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, and behind me here are our attorney, Barry Arrington, former state representative Barry Arrington, Lori Sane, who's a state representative, a part of the complaint, Dave Williams, a state representative who's a part of the complaint, Steve Humphrey you'll see in the video, but wasn't actually a part of this complaint for a reason you'll see, and Minority Leader Patrick Neville. Later this afternoon, Rocky Mountain Gun Owners and our attorney will file a lawsuit that, if successful, will overturn House Bill 1177, the Red Flag Gun Confiscation bill that was just signed by the governor just a few weeks ago. Now, Democrats used illegal and unconstitutional tactics and methods to push a bill that would remove due process rights of our citizens. In other words, they violated due process on both ends. And if a judge agrees with us, the Constitution will throw this law out and effectively kill the red flag bill. Now, I'd like to ask our attorney, Barry Arrington, to come up and talk about some particulars about this lawsuit and why and how we filed it.
Hello, my name is Barry Arrington. I represent the plaintiffs in this action that we'll be filing this afternoon. And let me walk you through some of the particulars of it. In 1876, the people of the state of Colorado ratified a constitution that became effective in August of 1876. And since that day, Article 5 has governed the legislative branch and its procedures. And from the very first day that Colorado was a state, Article 5, Section 22 governed the reading of bills and the printing of bills. Now, what did it say originally? Originally, Article 5, Section 22 said every single bill had to be read twice at length. Had to read every word of every bill twice. That was a little bit cumbersome, and so the people ratified an amendment to the Constitution that said if there's unanimous consent of the legislatures, then that unanimous consent is presumed, and you can not read the bill at length. Now, under the House rules,
The light back on? Yeah.
under the House rules, unanimous consent is presumed unless a legislator stands up and requests the bill to be read at length. If any legislator, if any of the 100 legislators stands up and says, read this bill at length, it is absolutely mandatory that the bill be read at length. There is no wiggle room. There is no compromise. It is a requirement of the fundamental law of the state of Colorado. Colorado Supreme Court has upheld this provision, Article 5, Section 22, and said if a law is passed in contravention of the provisions of Article 5, Section 22, it is null, nugatory, void of no effect. And so our position here is that not one, but two legislators stood up and said, read this bill at length. And the Democrat who was in the seat at the time said, no, we're not going to allow you to read the bill at length. That's an improper motion, or we're not even going to hear the motion. That's a violation of Article 2, Section 25, and therefore the bill was passed procedurally in contravention of the Colorado Constitution. We're going to ask the Denver District Court to declare that the bill is unconstitutional and to enjoin its enforcement.
All right, Patrick, you want to make some comments? And let me try and get out of the way so you can see a video.
Look, Barry just laid it out to you very specifically. We want to show you. So, Jim, if you can please play the video. Well, I'll say in the meantime, while Jim's working on that, in March, District Court Judge David Goldberg, appointed by District Court by John Hickenlooper, ruled that Senate leaders had violated the Constitution in its consideration of HB 1172 and directed the Senate to follow the Constitution if it wanted to make HB 1172 into law. Our lawsuit alleges that the House leaders committed the same unlawful breach of procedure while considering HB 1177, the Red Flag Bill. And we're asking the judge to nullify actions taken up to now and direct the House of Representatives to follow the Constitution next year if it really wants to pass the law again.
While he's working on that, I'll add a couple things. Oh, we're good.
Okay. 1 second. Glad I'm.
It says it's okay. Go ahead, Eric.
Go ahead.
Okay, here we go.
Now we go.
Put the light off.
Here we go.
What's
No.
the date? What's the date on this?
No. March 1st. Do it later now.
Meeting will come back to order. The chair rules that the amendment is not germane to the bill and is out of order. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Read the bill, thanks.
So what they're doing here is they're showing on March 1st what exactly happened. And you can check this exact video out on our YouTube page at RMGO Freedom on YouTube.
Concerning extreme risk protection orders. So I have a problem with that ruling, and I request that the bill be read at length. Mr. Randall, please read House Bill 1177 at length. Law enforcement officer, law enforcement agency concurrently file a sworn affidavit for search warrant pursuant to section 16.331.5 to search for any firearms possession and control of respondent locations 3 named.
What you guys will see here is you'll start to see other House clerks come up and start reading certain portions of the bill at the same time as the main reader.
The evidence section 13.445.5. If a court finds a preponderance of the evidence that, based on the evidence presented pursuant to section 1441.5, the respondent poses a significant risk of causing personal injury, self-harm in the near future of having his or her custody or control of a firearm by a person possessing or receiving a firearm, that the court shall issue a temporary extremist
See this? They're all reading different sections of the bill at the same time.
Person or by telephoning the day the petitioner is filed, and the court date immediately following the day the petition is filed. According to section 1314.5, 105, the court shall schedule a hearing within 14 days after the issue of notice. The notice must date the petitioner.
Representative Humphrey. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I withdraw that motion. I would like to have some respect in this chamber for the rules. And on that note, reading the bill into a cacophony is a little bit ridiculous. The point is that the bill be read at length. Anybody listening at home, certainly that was unintelligible to, and I don't think that that's appropriate. Representative Singh.
So what they're showing here is people came up to the well. Essentially, it was illegible. Humphrey withdrew the motion, and then Representative Lori Sane just asked for the bill to be read at length once again, and it was denied by the chair.
Dave, you and Lori want to get up and we turn the lights back on, and you want to turn the projector off.
Yep.
By the way, that video is on Rocky Mountain Gun Owners YouTube channel. That whole video, you can pull that down and use it. But of course, you can look at the original source material with the legislature if you want as well.
Well, I just want to thank Rocky Mountain Gun Owners and Dudley Brown, and of course our attorney Barry Arrington for helping us uphold our Constitution. I think what you're seeing right now shouldn't be a surprise. When the Democrats offered this bill, it was unconstitutional on its face to begin with, and it shouldn't be surprising that they tried to pass it in an unconstitutional way. So I look forward to our day in court and ultimately when we win.
That's right, and thank you all for being here too. And really, this denying not only the people of Colorado but their representatives an opportunity for a valid motion that the voters approved to deny the reading of a bill at length is simply unacceptable. So that's why we're bringing this lawsuit forth, to protect that right. And I do also believe the bill is unconstitutional on its face, and the way it passed was also unconstitutional.
Well put. Before I conclude and take questions, let me say that Rocky Mountain Gun Owners and our members have been very dedicated to defeating this bill both last year in the legislative session as well as, of course, this session. This does not preclude any other lawsuits we might file. In fact, we are pursuing another lawsuit in case this is not successful in a different manner. We'll announce that later. I also want to make it perfectly clear that this does not stop any of the recalls that are now in process. We are recalling up to 9 House members and 3 senators, and they're all in process right now. And regardless of what happens with this, we are going to pursue all of those. So with that, I'll take questions.
Dudley, how long do you predict it would have taken if, in fact, the entire bill had been read 2 separate times? Do you guys have any guessing for how long that would have taken?
Hours for certain.
Off the top of my head, I'd probably say 2 hours tops.
2 hours. Yeah.
I mean, it could have been longer, but you're looking at, typically with all the bills, we're looking at about a minute per page.
But it doesn't really matter, does it? Because of the rules and the Constitution, which certainly are much stronger and hold more weight than a simple legislative rule or even agreed upon practice.
The court has already ruled on this issue. The Denver District Court said in the Senate case, they estimated that it would have taken 40 hours to read that bill in the Senate case. And the court said that that's what it takes. That's what it takes.
Representative Humphrey, you withdrew your motion, but my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, once you've made a motion for a bill to be read at length and they begin that process, you cannot ask a second time. Is that correct? Because Representative Sane came up and suggested it, and they said that had already been dealt with. And my understanding is you only read a bill at length once,
on seconds, once on thirds, even if you withdraw the motion, the constitutional requirement has been met.
That's a legal question that I think I'll field.
Please.
The answer is the bill was not read at length. The answer is the bill was not read at length. That they started to read the bill, they got a little ways into it, and then Representative Humphreys withdrew his motion.
Do you know how far into the bill?
Not very far at all.
Okay.
And so the law is any of the 65 members of the House of Representatives can require the entire bill to be read. And until the entire bill has been read,
Okay.
it has not been read at length.
That was my
Yes.
question is, do you have to get through the entire reading of the bill
Yes.
in order for that requirement?
Yes.
Question, actually.
Thank
It is a good question.
Hey, Dudley, why did Rocky Mountain gun owners choose this type of legal challenge rather than leading with something related to gun rights?
Well, I think I answered that just a few minutes ago. We're going to do both. We're going to do all of the above.
But why just start with this?
Well, because we believe that the red flag bill is unconstitutional itself. The concept of removing due process is unconstitutional, and therefore using a process, an unconstitutional process to pass the bill is quite related to the Constitution. So, yeah, for both reasons, and frankly, all of the above. So,
you're asking for a bill to be a law to be thrown out over a technicality. How does that work?
I'll field that one. I'll take umbrage with you calling the Constitution a technicality. It's not a technicality.
How does it? How does a judge say that law is no longer good?
This is exactly the same way the Colorado Supreme Court said in the last time Article 5, Section 22 was abridged in the House of Representatives. It said you didn't comply with the mandatory provision of the Constitution, and therefore the bill is a nullity.
Can you identify that case?
It's in the complaint cites that case, and it will be up on RMGO's website. Of course, it will be up in the district court's website when the case is accepted.
Barry, you may take umbrage, but a lot of people are going to say it's a technicality. What do you say to those folks? You say, let's be honest, this is a technicality.
The technicality constitutional argument is made all the time. It's the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment. What? You didn't have actual probable cause? Technicality. The Constitution stands in the breach for each and every one of us. And at the very day we start saying, well, that's a technicality, we're going to ignore it this time, where does that end?
you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to actually publish your stories that you're writing right now based on a technicality, the First Amendment. So,
is there any way that you can send us, or you can send it to one person, we'll make sure it gets to everybody, a copy of the end of this report filing? They don't make those filings online available to the public.
yeah, we'll send it out with the later this afternoon as soon as we have it electronically set up. Yes, sir.
A question for Dudley or the lawmakers. I mean, is it just this bill, or are you worried that this violation happened with other legislation that's passed this session?
Well, our organization is obviously concerned about the red flag bill, and that's what it's centered around. If there were others, yeah, of course. But that our main interest is obviously based on the gun rights issue. Yeah.
Do you expect to have the same judge that ruled in the Senate case?
It's a random draw.
Yeah, I think it's random. We'd like to, though. You can make that happen.
Are you talking with state level gun groups in other states about possible legal challenges to URBA laws in other states? Is there communication going on there?
Well, yes, but I lead a national group, and so we have connections to pretty much every gun group in America. So
It's not obvious to me why Representative Humphrey is not on the lawsuit. Is it because he withdrew his motion and so his was fulfilled?
yeah, that and we don't like him. I'm kidding. Yeah, he just withdrew his motion, so we couldn't put him on the complaint. But he was a part of the process, and so that's why we brought him up here.
So what's Representative Williams' involvement been?
Well, both.
I did not provide my consent, and Representative Melton violated my right under the Constitution, and therefore that went plaintiff.
Yeah.
And the same applies to Representative Sanders. Yes.
Yeah. All right, thank you. We'll be happy to give some other individual interviews, although I know the legislators are supposed to be on the floor. Yeah, well, eventually, soon.
There's video.
Pardon?
The video will be made available to everyone as
well. Yeah. The video is made available right now and on our YouTube. twitter.com/RMGO freedom. That's on your news release. And then we'll, to those of you who signed in and we have an email address, we'll email you the complaint directly as soon as I have it electronically. Does that sound? Or you can give me your card, either one. Thank you all. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So we just saw Dudley Brown and Steve Humphrey, Representative Humphrey, Representative Sane, and Representative Williams, along with House Minority Leader Patrick Neville and our attorney Barry Arrington, give their reasoning for why this is completely should be thrown out in court. I mean, the Senate had a similar issue. The judge ruled in their favor. It's obvious. So in this time, if you have any questions, we'll stay on for another few minutes while we're waiting on our next guest. But we'll be having Sheriff Steve Reams join us very soon, who has been one of the tips of the spear on this issue and made sure that the Red Flag Gun Confiscation bill was known to folks around Colorado that its unconstitutionality, and because he is a sheriff and it directly affects him in more ways than one. But if you have any questions, leave that in the comment section below and I'll be happy to answer that. But where we were dropping off before the press conference, just to go into what RMGO did before now, before today. So obviously everyone knows about the Red Flag recalls, and you can go online to redflagrecall.com to figure out what exactly is going on with these recalls, and you can go in and give us your name so we can then contact you to get in touch with you about either starting a recall in your area on a legislator that acted unconstitutionally or was a bad actor, as we say, or if there's questions that you have about the recalls of ongoing recalls up in HD 50 or around the state. So just to give you another piece, so our emails were sent to over 300,000 people, delivered among about 100,000 or more petitions around the state. Our members alone sent emails upwards of 10,000. And not to mention us traveling around the state to educate you guys, to give our members education of what this bill exactly does. And for those that are just joining us, this bill essentially allows an ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, disgruntled spouse, neighbor, any of the above, to call the police, to let them know that you're crazy, that you're not fit to own a gun. At that point, the police would then take that as essentially a search warrant and no-knock raid your home, more than likely in the middle of the night, for that you would have no idea about this. The first that you would know about this gun confiscation order would be when the police are barging through your front door to confiscate your firearms. Once once they enter your home, as I mentioned earlier, to me, I'm thinking this is a home invasion. I'm thinking that this is, someone trying to break into my home. So this is not a good situation for law enforcement or me, because I'm going to come to my door or in my bedroom with my firearm to have, if I'm thinking someone's going to harm me, and then the SWAT team is coming in, and the output of essentially gunfire could be really detrimental in my case or in someone else's that this happens in. Once they seize your firearms, what they inevitably will, the courts will then give you 14 days to hear this, to develop a case, hire a lawyer, all of the above. You only have 14 days once the guns are confiscated. At this point, then you have to prove that you're not crazy. It's not guilty until proven innocent. You're guilty essentially as soon as that call was made. So I'm seeing a few comments here. So what happened? So today we announced that we are filing a lawsuit to do away with Red Flag, and I'm seeing that's with Michael. Michael, so we're filing a lawsuit later this afternoon to test the process that it was passed under. So essentially, this law was really just rammed through the House when it was asked to be read at length. It was not done so. So we're using the Constitution of the United States or of Colorado to essentially have this argument. And it looks like we have Sheriff Reams with us. Sheriff Reams, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. So just give our viewers here just a brief introduction of you and you've made yourself very in the limelight of your opposition to this bill, and just kind of give us a quick rundown.
Sure. Well, I came out against the bill early on in the version that was in the legislature last year, but I've been pretty vocal about the questions of the constitutionality of this bill, and have been taking every opportunity to support anybody who's willing to challenge this in the court system or through the legal process. And pretty happy to see that the Rocky Mountain gun owners have at least started that fight, and we'll be right there to continue fighting it all the way.
Absolutely. So you answered a little bit of my next question of, what are your thoughts on this lawsuit? Obviously, as a sheriff, it affects you more than some other people. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a necessary thing that has to happen. This law is passed with a lot of, well, I'll say, unintended consequences by the legislators. It puts law enforcement in a really tough situation where we're forced to try to balance our own personal safety, and then also at the same time try to balance the oath that we all swore to uphold and protect, as well as our constituents' constitutional rights. And this law tramples on all three of those aspects. And a gun owner has rights that are provided by the Constitution, but not just the national Constitution, but our state Constitution as well. And you would hope that the legislators of this that wrote this bill would have at least considered those things, and that's not what happened. And so law enforcement is put in the crosshairs to try to figure out how to make this thing right, and I just don't think it's possible. So the best possible solution for where we're at now is to stop the thing and get it pulled off the books. And if this process helps to further that with what RMGO is doing, that's great.
Right, absolutely, and I know you were there alongside of Dudley and myself, and these testimonies, and I'm sure you can attest to, the whole issue was about mental health, right? So it wasn't a gun grab. It wasn't a gun grab, and then they come into the Senate, and to the sponsors in the Senate say, this isn't about mental health at all. Right. I was shocked to even hear that they admitted it. So to me, what do you think? Well, actually, we have a question coming in, and we'll jump back to this. It says, how many sheriffs support this how many sheriffs support this lawsuit, sanctuary counties? And he's thanking you for your support on this lawsuit. But to talk about a little bit of what we were just going into, the mental health, what could have been done? Where could this have been better?
Sure. Well, I actually worked with Senator Sonnenberg to try to introduce a change to the mental health hold statute, and that would have been the right solution. I think we all agree that people that are obviously mentally ill and are adjudicated that way, they probably shouldn't own a firearm for that period of time while they're not mentally capable of making sound decisions. So that's the thing that needed to be addressed. There was an amendment introduced to address that very thing. But as you said, once this bill got to the Senate, the concept of actually addressing mental health issues was thrown out the window. The bill sponsors made it very apparent that this wasn't a mental health bill, that this was a gun bill, and that's what they passed. And so you look at how could this be fixed? Well, we can't fix this now other than to pull it off the books. It needs to be repealed. It needs to be found unconstitutional, and then maybe that will emphasize the need to go back and address the true problem, and that's mental health concerns.
Sure, and I know Dudley had in his press conference today had not just talked about this lawsuit, but hinted at other lawsuits. Is there anything that you can tell us about that?
Well, we're exploring all angles, and I say we, myself and my county commissioners, in conjunction with some other counties and other sheriffs, we're looking at all angles right now to figure out how to challenge the red flag bill in the best and most appropriate manner. We do believe that the constitutionality of this law will be the thing that gets attacked. The ex parte hearing and search warrants that are issued from that ex parte hearing, it doesn't follow obvious due process. So we believe that's the attack point. But we're looking at every angle that we can with this bill, and we know that it was hurried through, and so there's some likelihood that mistakes were made while they were hurrying this bill through the legislature.
Right, absolutely, and that's where RMGO's lawsuit comes in, and we feel like that them trying to ram it through, they weren't careful, and it's unfortunate. We had a question: is Douglas County a sanctuary county, even though the sheriff wants this bill?
So the answer to that is yes. I don't know that they use the term sanctuary county. I think they used constitutional preservation county, but they made it very clear. The county commissioners made it very clear there that they don't support this red flag law either.
Right. Well, Sheriff Reams, thank you so much for your time today, and we really appreciate all you're doing for the Second Amendment and the Constitution. We really appreciate your support.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time. And that's Sheriff Reams. He's been a great advocate for gun rights here in Colorado and protecting the Constitution. But to leave you with a few things, I'm going to ask you to like this page or like this video, share it with as many of your friends as possible so that we can notify people around the state of what's going to transpire later this afternoon with our lawsuit, as well as letting people know about what Sheriff Reams is doing up in Weld County and working to protect our rights. Thank you so much, and we look forward to speaking with you again soon.